Okay, so greetings, brothers and sisters. We're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff today. Trump is just a horrible person. He gets into this exchange with Caitlin Collins, and usually I mean, the mainstream media, especially CNN, which has been, anti-truther and pushed this censorship agenda. CNN more than any other network with their Donny O'Sullivan, which I showed you yesterday. Extremism, and they really push for it. CNN getting their ass handed to them by independent people on the internet. And so, I mean, when Trump would give it to CNN and MSNBC, I've always kind of liked it. But it's just, what he does here is so bad. I'm going to show you the clip. It's just brutal. And just everything about it is wrong. And this is, and there was a Miss Marple movie and I guess TV episode, which I'll show tomorrow probably. My wife and I just started watching it last night, but one of my viewers recommended it, and it's Trump's blueprint for Ketchup Gate. It's just hilarious. So that's like the whole thing. I gotta take some clips from it. I'll show you tomorrow. Like I said, I didn't watch we only watched the beginning of it, but I can see where it's going, and so there's all that. But I have a story to say, and once in a while I have to do a disclaimer because it's going to sound like prejudicial in this case against gay people, or it could be construed as that. I don't know if I have a bunch of clips to show about Israel, and some of them are about Judaism. I have three of them that were just sent to me by various people, weirdly. And I don't know if I'm going to show those today. But, whenever I do something like that, I want to make sure my position on all these things is clear. Like, I don't care about people's, whatever it is, demographics. Like, I just don't care about them. I'm not, I'm certainly not a hater. I don't hate anybody. I worked with gay people and whatever. I went to college with them, and I don't, I just don't have a reaction to stuff like that. To me, everything's kind of superficial, but there are things that can possibly make socially awkward situations. So this is what this story's kind of about, is socially awkward situations and my being socially awkward. So I'm in Whole Foods, and when I go shopping, I don't interact with people, and I don't like small talk, and I just I don't, whatever it is, and I just try to get through it. Like, it annoys me. I have the ability to be polite. I'm polite when I'm out, and that's the best way to be because it makes these situations go by, with seamlessly. But anyways, I'm in the produce section, and I make salads about 4 to 5 days a week, depending on what else we're eating. And I've been using, I try the salads I make are getting better and better, and we have a lot of cruciferous vegetables when we can, our cabbage, sauerkraut, and things like this. And I've been putting radicchio, and I don't know how to pronounce this word. There's words I just don't know how to pronounce. I know how it's spelled. I know it's kind of called. It's a small red cabbage, if you don't know what it is. And it's got like a bitter flavor. It's got really a nice color. It adds color to salad. I've been having bitter things. I've been eating a lot of dandelions and dandelion leaves. Like, it's that time of year here where they're just everywhere. And they're good for the liver. And there's these things, asparagus. There's these, various things that come up during the spring that are bitter herbs. And they, the taste of them triggers like a liver cleanse. I mean, there's these things which I don't want to get into, but having the bitter taste is good for you. Like there's this Wild Brine company that makes sauerkraut and kimchi, and they make this kimchi with miso in it. And my wife and I have been eating it like daily, and they also make like a sauerkraut with apple. Like, it's just amazing. And I think they're going out of business, which my wife and I were kind of bumming about. But they, But anyways, there's these things that are just really good for your, various things. And so the radicchio, actually, I don't put a lot in it because it's bitter, the salad, but it's just, something I regularly get. And I see they're out of it. And there's a guy there putting produce out. So I'm going to have to ask him, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So it's already going to be socially awkward. And then I go, uh, excuse me, or whatever I said, right? Because, you have to get it to the attention of the employee. And the dude is totally gay, right? You can just see he's gay. Which usually doesn't faze me. It doesn't make it any more socially awkward, but I don't know how to pronounce this word. And whenever that's the case, it's just, it's going to make again, I always feel socially awkward just talking to people in general. Like I just, whatever it is, I'm not a conversational person. And so I go, do you have any radicchio? Because, that's just what came out, right? Do you have any ridiculous? So I just asked, and my wife calls like minutes later, and I know she's going to find this hilarious. And, I'm in an aisle with no people, and I'm like, I got something to tell you, but I'll wait, I'll call you back when I'm in the car. I'm in Whole Foods, and she goes, then I see there's no people there, and I go, I just had to ask a gay dude if he had any radicchio. And so, Whole Foods has a lot of people. There's two Whole Foods near me. One's near my dentist, and like it's farther away, but occasionally I go there, like after a dental appointment. And there's two transgender people that work there. But there's lots of people with piercings and these kind of things, like just people who are obviously liberal people or different, whatever. They would be in a group of demographic that I don't interact with very much. So I have to ask this guy if he has any radicchio, and he goes, well, I go check in the back. And I go and I get some other stuff because, I got other things to get there in the produce aisle. And then he comes back. He's got a box. He opens up the box, and I'm like psyched that, I'm going to have to get the radicchio, but I have to. He's holding a box of radicchio. It's so radicchio. And so that's, I have to grab one of them and get out of there as soon as possible. And that's what I did. So there's this great clip from CNN. I got to go capture it. I'm going to eat breakfast in a few minutes here. And I haven't turned the TV on yet. And I didn't get it last night. But I want to show this thing with Trump first. But first there was a comment I wanted to address. And I did not take a screenshot of it. And so today's Tuesday, April 15th, 9:30. I have to make my sitting video as well. And then right here, 15 minutes ago, this bot. The video discusses Trump's lack of Christian faith, CNN's coverage of extremism, Stephen A's potential presidential run, and various political topics. It criticizes the mainstream media, AI, and education, and explores themes of social change and spiritual evolution. So that's happening. So I got to deal with all that. But they have this guy who's summing up the videos, which, is probably even helpful for me specifically because I don't remember what's in videos. And I can scroll through the comments and I kind of know what people are talking about because I've already forgotten what's in the videos. So I think it's overall, it's, so a few people are commenting on having weird days and lack of sleep. This thing. Last night I slept through. I almost never sleep through because, I don't know, as I got older, it's not just because I have to get up and go to the bathroom or something, but it's like sometimes I wake up, I'm not breathing right or I'm sleeping weirdly, so it just, even when I go into a deep sleep, but I slept through last night. It took me a while to go to sleep. My wife and I were up a little bit late, and we were joking about something. But, whatever. But this has happened to people. And I watched the end of that show, The Leftovers. And I kind of think it was a good show, but, it has a little bit of that Lost energy, where they keep you, where Lost, they would have some kind of, some mystery, so unresolved, the human mind likes things tidy and resolved. And so when you have mysteries and you have these things and all these, conspiracies and all these, whatever it is, and Lost would resolve one thing and then give you three more things that needed resolution. And it keeps you thinking about it, kept people talking about it. Lost was particularly egregious because the ending was so horrible. I watched like the first season and a half and then came back and watched the ending and I was like, oh my God, that's like, the whole ending was horrible, right? Like they had no way to tie it all together. They just were putting these, and it's particularly egregious, but these cliffhangers that they put in there. And the drama in the show, it had a kind of a good resolution in the ending, this show. Um, but spoiler alert, I'm not going to talk about the ending, but there's elements to these people were messed up because 2% of the population just disappeared, right? And the world's in chaos and it gets kind of gross at times, this show. But the one thing that I want to say here, there is and hopefully I'll remember to put images of this in. I'll try to do that right off the bat at this point in the video. So there's a character in the show played by the actress Amy Brenneman, who is married to the main character. And she joins this cult of people that believe that everybody already is dead when the 2% left. And they're just walking around. And they chain smoke and they're just getting into they just stare at people, trying to win them over. Usually people who've lost who have lost people. But I know Amy Brenneman, whatever it is, because Huffington posted this thing on abortion. And she talked about, well, I terminated a pregnancy, and it was such a good thing, and it made me feel so good, and I was so grateful to be able to do that. And she was, saying these things about having an abortion, and the look on her face was clearly anything but happy. Whenever I see a woman talk about this, talking about abortion, it's usually painful. You can see the pain because it's, a painful thing. Because it's, whatever, the killing of a fetus, right? It's a whole thing. No matter how liberal they are and how pro-abortion they are, they try to put on a happy face, and she's talking about this thing. And I believe that maybe there's always possible good reasons for an abortion. Like it could be, like there could be health risks or something wrong. There could be cases made for this, right? Like whatever it is. Whatever situational, like there's always things they're there for whatever it is. But it's never an easy thing. Like it's never something that's like it's not like, getting a tumor removed or something like that, right? There's always going to be emotional consequences, especially for the mom. But for every, just like with a miscarriage, it's just emotionally, you might not even want the kid. You might be stressed out by it. It might be a relief. But still, there's just something there. And at the mom, there's a soul that's with her. There's a baby soul, and that baby soul disappears, in a miscarriage, and there's a relationship being formed there, and a very intimate relationship between the mother and the child, and it's just always painful. And so Amy Brenneman is just like lying about this. And I have some screenshots of this thing. I still, let's say, I should still have them. And I look for the video, and well, let me see if it's still there. Let me see if I can actually find it. Anyways, they don't have it. She has multiple videos out there where one of them has this nice music behind it, and she has this way of sort of slowing down and talking very like, caring, like she plays a therapist in The Leftovers. And she talks about it in a way where she's going around. There's a whole movement of women telling their abortion story and pushing this stuff, right? And it was all celebrities. It was all Hollywood, women. And Amy Brenneman was, from that shitty show, Judging Amy. But Huffington Post had like this exclusive, and they've deleted the video, which I found before. And it says the Leftover star Amy Brenneman on why abortion shouldn't be demonized. So it's talking about her being in The Leftovers, which is interesting. And so it says, so yeah, when I was like 21, I was like, terminated a pregnancy. It was like so grateful. Um, let's see, I have other photos here of her saying things about it. And then there's another one that I have. Because I also, obviously, like, enough with the guns, enough with, enough, we're done with guns. And there was another quote here. But among the kind of ways that those issues sort of go together, I saw something on Facebook like, you know, about every time someone goes to buy a gun, we put them through what we were talking about, putting women through when they have an abortion. So it's like, you're really, so it's like, are you really sure? Are you really sure? Like this thing. Um, but the thing where she says the terminating the pregnancy stuff, like there was a specific words. And I was like, so yeah, I was like 21, terminated a pregnancy and was like so grateful. So in the show, they, later on she's in this cult, and I don't know if it's in the second season or later on the first season. It just goes a flashback to where people were. Like her husband's cheating on her with some woman, and the woman disappears, right? Like this is where they were when there's another character who loses her three children, her two children, her husband. Like she's at the breakfast table with them, and they just disappear, right? So this, where they were when this happened. And Amy Brennan is her character is on the, in the OB's office, getting an ultrasound. She just found out she's pregnant. Her husband's cheating on her. Like there's tension in the marriage, and she looks over and there's a fetus there, and the thing happens where all these people leave, and the fetus just disappears, right? Now to go, the fetus. It turns out they go somewhere, or there's a kind of a in the ending of the show, which happens like the very last show. So I'm not going to get into all that much here. There are good things about the show. There's spiritual stuff. There's like there's a lot of Freemasonic symbolism and a lot of things. There's just stuff in there that's kind of makes it kind of interesting. It's a weird show, but there's real problems with it. Like there's, they're trying to save the world, and I want to talk about this in my next video, talking about saving the world, when clearly they shouldn't be, right? Because it would be God's will. I mean, they're going against God's will. These are religious people and spiritual people, people claiming to be those things, trying to save something that shouldn't be saved. There's a point where God, anyways, I'll get into that in another voiceover. There's a lot of mistakes and flaws in what they're doing, just timing wise and other things that just don't add up. But this fetus would have gone to another place without a womb, so it was basically an abortion, which you find out at like the very last. She's not a part of the last episode in that sense, but she, like 2 episodes from the very end, she's talking to her husband, who's this, lead character, is kind of a messiah character, but he's like, angry and just, wherever he is, and she tells him, "I was pregnant." And I was on the operating, I was on the table with the ultrasound, getting an ultrasound. She looks over, and the baby disappears, and she tells him that. Like if she's, she would later leave and join these, the guilty remnant, these people who refuse to speak, and they write everything down, and they chain smoke, and they try to, get everyone to remember that the, world ended, and they wear, all white. It's a whole thing. And they're part of the big problem story. So her husband's the chief of police, and she's this, she's joined these people that he has to deal with. That people regularly come and beat the shit out of him. It's like a whole thing, right? When I saw that she was pregnant when they did the show, I was like, I remembered her abortion story. It's like one of the things that stands out to me when I've covered this. I have a folder called Mother. That's where these it's about motherhood and the demonizing just a mom. I've made a video that geez, I can't remember the name of it, and I'm sure there's some people that's like my favorite video, their favorite video of anything I made, talking about the beauty of motherhood. I should find that video and make it available again. I think it's called Just a Mom. I don't know what it is, but there's these articles that are just a mom. But it's something I remember. Like I make so much, videos every day, and there's just so much content. But I remember this thing with Amy Brennan, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, she's in this show, and she has a cosmic abortion. And so finally she tells somebody. She hasn't told anybody about this, it's been 7 years. And she's kind of saying a goodbye to her ex. And like it seems like one of them's going to die or both of them. He's going to, he comes back to life a bunch of times in the show. And he goes into the, whatever, the afterlife and does shit, so that's part of what happens. And he's about to do it again. So she's talking to him. And she goes, I was on, she tells him what happens. And he said, why did you tell me? He goes, well, she goes, did you want a baby? He's like, no. And she's like, me neither. So she had this, it was like a relief, and yet it made her like go into this guilty remnant thing. Whatever it was, I mean, it was like traumatic, but she, it was just a weird fucking thing, right? And she was, doing this Huffington Post interview with that being part of the storyline, where she was watching a fetus disappear, like in her belly, like this fucked up thing, right? And so, the show is tedious at times, and the characters are mostly unlikable. It's hard to root for any of them and anybody in the show, like people in general. And so it's hard to get through like 3 seasons of the thing. There's some things that were good about it. Like I say, I wouldn't recommend it. But, I'd never heard of the show. And watching it now, people have this feeling of impending doom, which is part of the whole thing. And I'll get into this with Trump in a moment. Let me just find this comment. Well, there's another comment here. It says, it's 2019, Year of the Beast, and it wasn't. 2018 was Year of the Beast. This guy has it wrong. And Year of the Ghoul was 2019. Year of the Broken was 2020. Year of the Schism was 2022. Year of the Fuck It was 2023. Year of the Air Church 2024. He has those right. But like it was like 2017 and 2018 were Year of the Beast, so I'm not sure if I skipped a year. I have it written down somewhere. So anyways, I found the comment. This was from last night. Nah, every time you name a year, I see people adopt it on large scale. Remember the Year of the Ghoul? Never heard Ghoul said ever except in books, and suddenly everyone said Ghoul that year. It's a weird thing. Because it's not like a big deal to me. Like I just did it one year. Like, there was the 2018 Year of the Beast thing. And again, it's almost like it was 2 years, but it was whenever they re-released Beauty and the Beast, and then there was that character, the Beast, in the M. Night Shyamalan movie, where it was a guy with multiple personalities. Remember that thing? And there was also that same guy was in a movie earlier that year, which was called Filth. And it was a really gross movie. This same James McAvoy played both characters, the Beast and this movie called Filth. And I'd seen the movie that year. I don't know why. The guy was a Freemason and had all this Freemason stuff, and he dressed up like a woman, like he was a really abusive cop. Really fucked up movie. And so I was like, wow, there's a lot of beastly energy. Hearing the word the beast a lot, there was beast movies and all these things. So I called it the Year of the Beast. And it was a sort of a thing. I'd done something earlier. I'm not sure what it was. But and that's where the whole thing started. And so, with that, let me read this comment. And so, go back and reread the comment. Every time you name a year, I see people adopt it in large scale. Remember the Year of the Ghoul. Never heard Ghoul said except in books, and suddenly everyone said Ghoul that year. And so that was the weird thing about that was, Ghoul became a thing, and people noticed it. And then people started sending me stuff that confirmed the year, like just things that were out there. I have the list here. Let me find it. Pages. 2017 Year of the Beast, 2018 and 17 were together. Like that was something weird about it. 2019 Year of the Ghoul, 2020 Year of the Broken, 2021 Year of the Schism, 2022, the year of the dummy. I think that person forgot the year of the dummy. 2023, year of the fuck it. 2024, year of the amateur. And 2024, 25, chaos. The thing about all that is, and I have an idea. Oh, in 2016, a year of truth facing up to things. So I started 2016 where that like these titles were there, like I found these things, and but I didn't really think it wasn't a thing till the year of the ghoul, and everyone started to say, they were hearing the word ghoul all of a sudden, and Tucker Carlson started to use it, and what this person said in the comment is that these people, like I say these things, and all of a sudden other people start talking about it. Like this is kind of a common theme where people write me messages and send me things. And I don't know whether people just notice stuff, and that can't be the whole explanation, that they wouldn't notice before. Because I say it's the year of the thing, right? It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing that I do, but then people start to document other people saying things or seeing things, writing about this or saying the words. And Ghoul was very specific because, because all of that, like, it's just, you know what I mean? It's something where it wasn't something said a lot. And then Tucker Carlson used the word ghoul for these various, liberal people. And, Tucker Carlson later came out, I made a video calling him out for this guy, whatever his name was, Adam versus the Man. He was a kind of a truther guy. And he asked Tucker about 9/11. Tucker's like, come on, now come on, that's just stupid, come on. And then Tucker Carlson came out and apologized for this, after I said something in a video. So I wondered if he had somebody on his staff that watched these things. I mean, I can't imagine he would. Like, I don't know. Like, my videos don't get many views. So, like, this idea that these people are watching it seems like kind of silly. The vast amount of influence that, I mean, obviously Year of the Chaos was, now it's an obvious choice given what Trump's doing. But, Trump wasn't doing it yet because I said this in December. And I said, we never know what Trump is going to do. That's the thing about Trump. Because Trump doesn't even know what he's going to do. He's very inconsistent. He's very impulsive. But he came in and he started doing things, crazy shit. He says crazy shit, but doesn't do crazy shit. He sometimes does crazy shit that he says, but most of the time he says crazy shit and never does it. Like, for example, when he said lock Hillary Clinton up, and he said that played well before. He said this to a crowd of people yelling, lock her up, after he had won the election in 2016. But then he said, that played well before, but now we don't care. He doesn't care, but they still, everyone, lots of his people voted for him just so he would lock Hillary Clinton up, right? And so, there's all these things like that. But Trump would say things and then not deliver on them. And sometimes he just says things that are off the cuff and, like, he doesn't remember them and, like, it doesn't, he doesn't follow through. But Year of the Chaos, even if Trump didn't do as much crazy shit as he's doing now, the liberals going nuts because Trump is president again was enough to cause chaos, right? And Trump's last term ended in chaos, his last presidency. So it wasn't like a big reach on my part, obviously, but the fact that they're already saying, I mean, we're just in April, and now the Economist is coming out with this cover, this magazine cover of the chaos, and then just everybody talking about it. It's a word now. It's a talking point from the Democrats about this, stuff that's going on. And, they all didn't watch my, I'm sure the Rothschilds or the people publishing The Economist didn't watch my year of the chaos. But somehow, it's kind of a bit, it's not, that's this thing I do. It's predictable and it's obviously it's there. But it comes around again and again. Like, it just gets confirmed over and over again. And it's kind of weird. Like, the years are interchangeable. Like, you could say any year is the year of the ghoul because there's ghouls running this thing. I mean, people say zombie, and I used to use the word zombies and vampires, but ghoul is just something specific. Like, it's, it's not quite a zombie, but it's like, it's more conscious than a zombie, right? Where a zombie is just a zombie, but a ghoul has some level of consciousness. The reason I said the year of the ghoul was when Pete Davidson was prominent. Like, he just popped as a person that year. And he was like, I was like, and then, like, I did a video with him in it, and then also around that same time, either in that video or whatever, I was covering Celine Dion, who was, now she has stiff person syndrome, which is admitting she's a ghoul, right? But I was like, look at these two ghouls. Like, she was skin and bones in her face and, like, just all of it. And I'm like, wow, there's all these ghouls running around. And I, like, I'd never used that word before. I don't think I've ever even said it. And then I, came up, well, this would be the year of the ghoul. Anyways, so it's a weird thing. Like, it's because, like I said, I don't get that many views in my channel. I mean, I'm pretty under the radar. And so I don't foresee that all these people watch my videos or it gets around to them. Or I don't think people are commenting enough on what I say here. That these themes end up playing out. Even when I forget about it. Like, usually by now I've forgotten about the year of. And people keep on pointing it out to me and reminding me. And, this is a big year for me because there's a prediction in February 2026, the following year, next year or this year, something. Like, it's around this time. There's supposed to be a really big event. And it might be a nuclear one. So, given the whispers of the Brighter World's prophecies, then this is going to be the first of a series of upheavals that are going to destabilize the world. And we haven't, like, all the stuff that we've had, 9/11 and COVID and things like that, and the economic collapse of 2008 and the impending economic collapse, like, they're just precursors to, real devastating, life-changing, extinction level things that are going to occur according to these upheavals that are talked about. Anyways, so yeah, that's all interesting. Let me get into this thing with Trump, because it's ties into all this stuff. Okay, so let's get into this to start off with. This is so egregious.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country.
They're all nodding their heads, right? And so there's a number of people that Trump has deported and put in this jail, or both, especially the jail stuff, that were illegal aliens, but they had tattoos and they weren't gang members, but they just thought they were. Trump does very sloppy work. And, I am not a meticulous person. I'm not a perfectionist. But there are things like human lives that you have to be more considerate of, right? And they illegally deported this guy to prison. I got this, let me just put this Jake Tapper thing in, because I have this, the end of Jake Tapper's show was just, like, incredible. There was all this great stuff there. But they covered this on CNN, and they covered it in the beginning of his show, Jake Tapper's show. Somebody was in for Aaron Burnett, but they covered it right after that, too. It was the number one story yesterday, because Trump fucked up. Like, he fucked up. Like, his administration got sloppy and fucked up. And they deported a bunch of people, and Joe Rogan called them out for it, and a bunch of people, Trump supporters. And, you can't be sloppy with something like this. And everything that Trump does and his people do is going to be sloppy. They're just not, they don't care. Like, there's an arrogance there. Now, I'll show you that clip in a second. Let's listen to this for a little bit here.
And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs.
So a judge had ruled that this guy should not go to El Salvador, or whatever it was. Whatever it was, he should not be deported there. I'll show you the clip in a second. And Trump administration kind of had to admit they fucked up. But now they're just being aggressive, right? Like they're so obstinate here, right? Every one of these fucking pricks get into it. This guy, little Marco, right? I just showed you that thing. Trump calling him little Marco.
If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
They'll provide a plane.
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
But Pam, you're the best, Pam. Pam, you're the fucking best.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanting, because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you...
Which I say this about CNN all the time. Nobody's watching them. Nobody's like, they're dying. They're dinosaurs. They're already dead, right? CNN and MSNBC, they have literally a dying audience. Fox too. Nobody watches them. Young people don't watch them. They're dead. Like they're going to have to reboot everything and scale down. They're going to have to, they're all doing it. They're all having money issues. Even with the Trump 2.0, where people are freaked out about Trump, they still can't muster quality audiences, right? I mean, Trump should be saving them because the Trump haters will return to them, that have left over the last 4 years because they got tired about CNN and MSNBC always covering Trump and their obsession with Trump. But now they should be returning. But even with that, it's not working. And so, I'm happy with them bashing. I like it when Trump bashes them. But he's being a real dick here because this has nothing to do with CNN. They fucked up. And Trump, even though they admitted they failed, they're now being aggressive about it. And, yeah, there's lots of people here illegally. But you can't demonize all these people, which they're going to do here.
You answer that question also, please.
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point.
Look, this guy's getting X'd out by the camera.
As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation.
Again, they can say anybody's a foreign terrorist. Yeah, anything that Trump says or anything that comes out of that, Trump's just the worst liar. Right? I mean, he's got his education secretary saying A1, which should be a fireable offense. She doesn't even know what AI is. If someone has no background other than she is been a Trump supporter and friend for years, the thing's a mess, right? They're sloppy and they're arrogant and they fucking, they make huge mistakes, right? And so, they can call anybody a terrorist, right?
This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children.
Okay, so this guy doesn't look like that, right? I'm not sure, he's had a number of people that they have classified as criminals or terrorists and just thrown them into this jail. This is a money-making thing, right? And Trump wants him, he's going to say, he wants him, they build these mega prisons in El Salvador, and Trump has a deal and a relationship with them, and they're sending those people there, and Americans are paying for that, and I'm sure there's kickbacks and all. It's just all that kind of scummy stuff. Big prisons are, prisons and treatment centers are big business. There's a judge who was bribed to send kids who were guilty of misdemeanors into treatment centers for 2 years and shit like that. And he got busted. and he was making millions of dollars of kickback money because he was filling up these treatment centers, and these jails and things. I mean, it's a big business, like it's a whole thing, and they can lock anybody up because they don't give a shit if you're guilty or not, because you're just a slave to them. You represent money that the government's going to pay to house you, unlawfully in this. I mean, it goes with the law because they've rigged the system. Taxpayers are going to pay for this, right? And then, there's just all this. It's just a total scumbag business. And I covered this in an earlier video.
Children is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get him
asking
back?
to.
Again, just totally aggressive with it, right? Like they fucked up because they're sending people away, and they're just, just like with the fuck up. Remember I said this, that there's going to be no accountability to them leaking classified information and war plans to a liberal reporter who may or may not have been in Mossad and being embarrassed publicly, like this sloppy shit, the AI thing, A1 thing, like just, they're sloppy, they're fucking incompetent, they're bozos. Trump's like, we got the best people. They can't handle the smallest task without fucking them up, right? This woman back here posing in front of the prison with these people, I mean, it's just fucking egregious. Like posing in all her fucking Barbie outfits, like it's just... It's like little Marco and these guys. Okay, so I just did a voiceover. I'm going to put it here. I was going to put at the end of this thing. I did it after I shot all this stuff. But it's really important because this is what the AI bot says about this guy. And there's no evidence that he's in a gang. So these guys are saying he's in a gang, he's a terrorist. Let me play this one clip again, the beginning of this thing, where... let me just play this clip here. Okay, so let's get into this to start off with. This is so egregious.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
So the Trump administration admitted they made a mistake. They deported this guy and put him in a prison. He didn't belong there. And he's committed no crimes, which we'll get into in a moment here. And so let's play that here. So this guy is not a criminal, but they've made a mistake. And the way they handle making a mistake, even though they admitted to the mistake, is to get really aggressive about it and then, slander this guy and make him a part of something that he's not. I mean, there's no evidence proving this. It's just, like this is the rule of law. And Trump doesn't give a shit about the rule of law. And then when this thing ends, this thing that I'm showing you with Fox News is covering here, this meeting here. I got another clip where Trump's talking about doing this to domestic terrorists. That could be anybody. Because as long as he doesn't have rule of law, like he doesn't follow rule of law, then you can call anybody a terrorist, right? This is the problem. That there's been the Democrats and the whatever you want to call the deep state is doing shit like this. And Trump and his boneheads are now doing this to, anybody. Okay, so I tried to look this guy up. Of course, the left is always going to want to go against anything that Trump says. So, I looked up the AI bot, which of course gets its information from wherever's available on the internet. But this is this guy, Kilmar Abrigo. I asked, is Kilmar Abrigo a gang member? Based on the information available, the situation surrounding Kilmar Abrigo and allegations of gang membership is complex and contested. ICE allegation. The Trump administration and ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement have stated that Kilmar Abrigo Garcia is a verified and ranking member of MS-13 gang. This claim was used to verify his deportation, despite any earlier order granting him withholding of removal due to fear of gang persecution in El Salvador. Lack of criminal conviction. Abrigo Garcia has never been charged or convicted of any crime in the United States. So that is, a big thing, right? Because he's not, or El Salvador. So the guy's never been convicted of anything. And so if he was a high-ranking gang member, why would he come to the U.S., right? There's, is he a drug dealer? Is any of these kind of things, what's his motivation for leaving El Salvador? Denied gang membership. Abrigo and his attorney denied the allegation of gang membership. They state the U.S. government has never produced evidence to support the accusation. The claim of the gang membership appears to stem from a 2019 accusation by a confidential informant who alleged Abrigo Garcia belonged to an MS-13 group in New York, a place he never lived. This information was used to deny him bond in immigration court, but was not a ruling that he was definitely a gang member. And so somebody said he was a gang member in New York, but the guy never lived in New York. And in the Protection Act in 2019, an immigration judge granted Abrigo Garcia withholding of removal to El Salvador due to a well-founded fear of persecution by gangs there. This protection was in place at the time of his deportation. Therefore, the U.S. government has accused Kilmar Abrigo Garcia of being a gang member. He has no criminal record, denies the allegation, and was previously granted protection from deportation due to gang threats in his home country. The evidence presented to support the gang membership claim appears to be based on uncorroborated allegations from a confidential informant. So again, certainly not something where you could say that the guy was that, right? So lots of the people that Trump deported just had tattoos and, putting in prison, jail there in El Salvador weren't criminals, weren't convicted of any crimes here. And so that's suspect, right? Like they're not good people, Trump and his people. They're not thorough. And they're liars. They lie about everything. Not that the mainstream media doesn't lie, not that the Democrats don't lie, but Trump lies in a totally different way. Like he doesn't worry about how bad his lies look, especially now. He'll just say something and stick with it. And you guys can't do shit to me anyway, right? Because he's got that ruling from the Supreme Court that the president can do illegal shit and not be prosecuted for it. And so Trump is he's just playing with house money. And so he just lies when, his lies are easily exposed and doesn't care. And this calls everything fake news. And, it's kind of a nightmare scenario because CNN is fake news, but Trump is worse. At this point, he's worse. So here's the bigger question. I have a bombshell thing that's MSNBC just caught. Trump's talking about locking up domestic terrorists, which we'll get into, which is brutal. So I asked, did Kilmar Abrigo have a job in the U.S.? Based on information available, Kilmar Abrigo did have a job in the U.S. He lived in the U.S. for roughly 14 years and worked in construction. He later worked as a union sheet metal apprentice. At the time of his deportation, he was actively pursuing career advancement by enrolling in a college course to obtain a professional license. In 2019, he was arrested by ICE while looking for day labor at Home Depot in Maryland. So if this guy was a gang member, whatever that means or not, maybe he had some affiliation with a gang or something, we don't know. But there's not really any evidence to support that. It's just one guy saying that's the case. And so he had lived here for 14 years and committed no crimes, or at least was convicted of no crimes, right? And he was working at these jobs. Not great jobs. Sitting out in front of Home Depot looking for construction work. But he was going to college and doing things that gang members probably wouldn't do, right? And so, he had 14 years here to do gang shit, right? To do fucking crimes, and he didn't do them, at least as far as conviction or being arrested. He wasn't arrested or wasn't charged of anything. And he was actively working. So, again, according to this, this guy might not even exist, but this is the official story stuff, right? The AI bot combs through the internet. These are the talking points. So, the guy isn't who Trump says he is because he wasn't doing terrorist shit. Terrorists don't go to community college and don't work construction. They have money. They're bankrolled, right? And they usually act fairly quickly. And so this guy was here illegally. That's true. And could be deported. That's also true. But other than that, Trump's story falls completely apart. So to make things worse, this is the really bad part about it. Let's go to this thing here.
Move right away.
So you don't plan to
But the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get it
asking
back?
to,
And
that-
what was the ruling
is that your
in
position?
the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele, what do you- what is
Presidente
your- can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle, how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like,
You know, this guy, I mean, it's like, looks like a fucking, some B-level, like, drug dealer, cartel guy, right? In a B movie. And, you know, Trump with this arrogant expression on his face, they have a deal, right? They have some kind of financial arrangement. And we're giving them money, and they're building these prisons, and this is, you know, Trump made these stupid fucking promises. You know, the real issue here is, look at this fucking smug fuck right here, right? And so the real issue here is rich people, many of them who say they're against immigration, many of them Republican, hire illegal aliens, right? They hire cheap labor costs. Like if you're running a business and Trump did this and all his friends did this and all these people do this, they hire illegal nannies, they hire illegal workers, they have illegal workers that are hired by construction crews that come on. They're all illegal aliens, right? And so you have poor people, many of them suffering in other countries, that are hard workers. And they're hungrier and they're more tolerant than Americans. And so they've made these narratives that they're bringing these people in to become an army against Americans, which may or may not be true. That the Democrats were bringing them in with these cards. And you can't trust it because the right-wing fucking people lie so fucking much. You know, the right-wing truthers, you know, there's no respect for the truth. And there's no respect for their audience. And I'm not saying the left don't lie. Yeah, of course they're everything they say is a lie. But the right-wing people come up with these scenarios, and then they make up shit, and they post it on the internet. And, you know, many of them are individuals. They're not governmental employees or any of these things. And then Trump will retweet these things, like when he said they're eating the dogs, which turned out not to be true. And that's like he's doing nothing for Springfield, Ohio right now. That just fucking blew over. But he wanted to scare people. He wanted to scare people with this idea that these El Salvadorian gangs and these Venezuelan gangs were coming here. And they were terrorists and all this stuff and smuggling drugs in. And, you know, they were a threat to Americans, which is, you know, some percentage of them are going to be that. And they are here illegally. Like they're violating the law. And I've said that all along. You know, the Democrats calling them immigrants when they're not. They're illegal aliens. They are illegal. Like they're here illegally. But people employ them. You know, these rich people employ them, and they never suffer for it. And they're like it's tax fraud. They're evading paying taxes for their workman's comp and all the things that go along with hiring people. And they're not hiring American citizens, and they're hiring these illegals, and they're creating the immigration problem because if there's no jobs, they wouldn't come here. But then there's the food industry that needs illegal aliens because Americans won't fucking do that labor. And if they did, you know, they would do it for more money than, you know, and food costs would go way up. And so there's like real fucking complicated issues here. And then Trump arbitrarily just going and deporting people. Many of them have been living here for a long time. And then some of them going to jail that don't deserve to be there because he doesn't care about fucking people. You know, these are overlords. Like these are fucking controllers, the people who are, you know, they look at everybody like, you know, you're here to serve me, right? You know, Trump wants to be a king. And so these two scumbags having a deal on this thing. And, you know, they've fucked up and made a mistake, admitted to the mistake, and now they're, you know, just being arrogant about the whole thing and being dickish to CNN, you know, Caitlin Collins, for asking legitimate questions.
I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him.
He's not a terrorist, right? Fuck you, he's not a terrorist. You know, he wasn't a terrorist.
United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
The guy wasn't convicted of murder here in America. Like he wasn't convicted of no crimes. They said he's part of this group, which may or may not be true, but they had no crime, nothing that he's done here.
Love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a
She's saying CNN would love to have a criminal released in our country. Like, it's just, I mean,
to being the murder capital of the world. No, that's not going to happen.
Well,
Water
they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
they would love it. They would love the criminal to be released in our country.
These are sick people. Mark,
CNN, these are sick people. These are sick people, right? This motherfucker, like, this scumbag motherfucker saying they're sick people.
do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that.
So when this was happening, when Trump said he was just going to take all these people and bring them back to their country, he was going to have to mobilize like an army. And he's flying these people back. So this is expensive. This is taxpayer money that's going into this. Whether or not this is cost effective to get rid of these illegal people, I don't know. Like, there's issues here. Like I said, it's complex issues. But I said these countries aren't going to just take them back. And in Venezuela, the Venezuelan gangs remember they had this video of this gangs walking around with machine guns in some apartment complex, which may or may not have been even America. And these images went around that these guys were taking over whole complex. It would be in tenement housing and shit like that, where there's already a lot of crime. But whatever. Like that, they made it worse than it sounded. Fox News, these people, these fear mongers were running with this bullshit, right? And so, they couldn't deport them back to their own countries, which I said. They're not going to just take them. What, you're going to just drop them in on parachutes? Like, you have to land, and people have their own. You have to go through immigration. You have to go through customs. Every country has some kind of protocol. Everyone who's traveled internationally knows what this is. And so it's not like you just go there and you drop these motherfuckers off in the airport and expect that, so Venezuela's not taking back any of their people, which were supposed to be the worst people. So they're putting them in El Salvadorian gangs, prisons, this mega prisons. And so this is like the fucked up thing, which is, it's, like I said, they couldn't do this, what Trump was promising. So they got a workaround. And then, they're paying the El Salvadorians, which it said, the IA bot said there's money being exchanged for anybody America sends there, especially when they're not from El Salvador. And so these people who are coming to America illegally, and, just because they have some tattoos or whatever it is, they're being fucking, bum rushed into the fucking El Salvadorian prison system, where they'll be, slave labor or whatever they do there, right? On the American taxpayer dime. And it's fucked up. Like, the whole thing's fucked up, right? It's not the most fucked up thing that Trump's done. It's just one of many, right? But they're being totally arrogant about it.
I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they
People like CNN, right? CNN sucks, but it's fucking, they're so defensive now. The fucking terrorists are a disaster. Like, they're a fucking disaster. And Trump's had to back off on that. And, they're at a point where they realize China might not do what they think what they want China to do. Like, that's where we're at, right? That's where they're at. And so they're realizing all these things. It's just like fucking, and instead of realizing they're like, oh my God, this guy's a fucking idiot, they're just all hunkering down and being like little victims, like little CNN's, like your fuck ups, your screw ups. This guy isn't a fucking genius. And all of his policies are backfiring because he doesn't fucking think things through. And he's a loser. Like, he does stupid shit. Like, he He's great at talking his way out of fucking mistakes and failures that he does consistently, right?
Want foreign terrorists in the country who
Foreign
kidnap
terrorists.
women and children. But President Trump,
You know, again, are they really terrorists? Like, if there are terrorists, yeah, that would be a whole different thing, right? But this guy wasn't a terrorist. Like, that's pretty much, no crimes were committed by this guy. No evidence he was a terrorist.
his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't
How many times am I going to answer this question?
you just say that?
What's that legal
Why do you
definition?
go
What it is?
over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country.
See, this is the thing, right? You know, these are going to be some good people that are law-abiding people that maybe are legal, but everything else they do is fine. They're going to be just dropped, and many of them are not going to be from El Salvador. They're going to be labeled as terrorists or whatever Trump wants to do because they don't give a shit, right? They don't give a shit about these people, or they don't give a shit about truth or any of these things. And it's a fucked up thing to do, to just put these people in prison for no reason. Like, it goes against what America... This is what... You know, we have these stupid Cubies. You know, the QAnon people. And they were supposed to be patriots. And these morons, you know, when I finally got into it, they used to come and comment, you know, back when they thought they were fucking, you know, Q was real and they didn't know they were getting played, and they still don't know that they were getting played by the intelligence community. You know, this was an anonymous person who claimed to have Q-level security. And so it was either individuals who were bullshitting, right? This whole idea that there was the bunch of good guys in the government, and Trump was one of their guys, and JFK Jr. and RFK Jr., all these fucking guys, all these people that were involved in it. That there's a bunch of good guys who are trying to get rid of the deep state. And it's completely fucked. It's not true. The deep state is everybody in the government. The deep state is the United States. The United States is deep state. You know, the intelligence community does things on our behalf to keep this shitty system going. The intelligence community, as scummy as they are, they do work that none of us would want to do because lies and evil and shit has to be done. Not all the time, because sometimes they do shit that doesn't have to be done because they're paranoid and they're fucking myopic in their view. But they do a lot of shit that if they didn't do those things, the country would collapse because we should have collapsed years ago. And so it would be, you know, it's God's will that we collapse and it's being prevented. But all of us who are Americans who benefit from the American system, or the globe, globally, the people that benefit from the system, you know, who aren't living in poverty, who have, you know, privileges or whatever it is, we benefit from evil being done to keep a system that, you know, without it would be chaos. Like fucking the system goes down, we have no backup plan. And you have all these fucking people running around, incompetent, crazy-ass people. Majority of people are so low functioning and so crazy, they're unreasonable. And, you know, now, imagine what they would be if the system imploded. You think they'll just get sane and they'll fucking figure it out and they'll learn how to grow food and work together, right? Like, think about all the people on medication, people addicted to, you know, the internet and video games and whatever it is, all the addictions that they have. I mean, people are addicted to multiple things. And they have self-medication and medication. Imagine if all that shit, all of a sudden, all these people, you know, when you have these heavy-duty psychological medications, what happens when you go off of them? What happens when you no longer are, you know, you have to go cold turkey? I mean, all these things that people will have to give up. People are going to go bash ape shit. Like, they just won't be able to deal with this fucking bat shit and ape shit. Because, you know, they're not competent now. They can't handle stress now. They can't handle their lives as it is. and their lives will get much worse. And so that stuff is being prevented by evil shit that's being done by the intelligence communities, other groups of people, right? And so, this is where we're at as a country. And for this prick to pretend, like this whole thing.
Country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand it. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it.
Open borders we have. There's just people walking through.
So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the
Again, this whole thing. Yeah, Biden sucked. But how much are you going to blame him for all your fucking mistakes? Like, you're no better than Biden. Like, Biden, he was bad in his own way, in a different way than Trump, right? But the immigration thing was a legitimate issue to whatever extent. But Trump is lying about it and making it, saying things that aren't accurate, specifically to do with this idea of fucking these people all being terrorists and these other things. Let's just wrap this one up, and I want to go show the other parts here.
By the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, "Sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark."
Okay, we can see why you're talking and what you say and what you think that you are a low IQ fucking, only a high IQ from the sense that he's slightly above the average, right? Like there's the average, which is whatever it is, and Trump is maybe 5 points higher than the average person, but now he's, older. But he's not brilliant. He's not smart. Trump has never been smart. Like he's good at one thing. Like he's good at self-promotion and telling people what they want to hear. He's a good salesman. He's good at selling. He's good at selling Trump, and he's good at selling people shit that, their own delusions. He's good at finding out what people believe, especially right-wing people, and selling to them, or what people fear, and selling to them what they want to hear. And that's something, but it isn't a good thing if there's no substance to any. If you can sell somebody something that's good, that's good. Like if you sell something, you have a plan, and you have to sell a plan that's good for everybody. But he doesn't have good plans. He doesn't have plans at all because all he does is sell. Like this is what he's into. He's into these moments where he's the center of attention, and he's selling people shit, and he's getting them to be on board with him. Where he can command the room and he can hold court. He's not good at being thorough and thinking things through and understanding things and doing research. He's not good at being truthful because everything he does is a fucking lie. He just makes shit up because he's selling shit, and making shit up is a part of it. Like, people who sell things and just lie and make things up as they sell them.
I hope you're happy with that, although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive. But I did do my physical, and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, "Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test?" I said, "Did Biden take one?" "No." "Did anybody take one?" "No, not too many people took them." I said, what about Obama? Did he take one?" "No, he didn't take one either." I said, "Let me be the only one to take one." But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking.
Okay, so those aren't real tests. The guy who said that Joe Biden clearly has Parkinson's said that the tests that Trump takes, because Trump did take some tests, Biden wouldn't take any of them because he had Parkinson's. His people wouldn't let him take them. And Biden was certainly worse off than Trump. I mean, in terms of his cognitive difficulties. But Trump's starting to break down. You can see he's not the same guy he was 4 years ago. And, whether it's just old age, you're just not as sharp. Biden had full-out Parkinson's, according to this doctor, which was very convincing. It's on. I got to show that again at some point. Jake Tapper gets into it with a book, which I'll show you. Not that. I don't know if he gets into that. But the guy who said, that Joe Biden had Parkinson's says there's a 4-hour intensive test, and it's hard to get through. It's exhausting. I mean, imagine people questioning your cognitive abilities for 4 hours. And that's not the test that Trump took. And it's the only test that's worth anything, he said. These other superficial tests, are, there are some level of results, but they're not, anything. But Trump, bragging about this. But, this is hurting a person and, people. And good, you can come out of the country. Like if the guy's, again, is he a criminal? Does he have a job? Does he have, was he contributing to society? They came in illegally. And I agree with this. When you break the law, then you're subject to the consequences. But are you going to consequence the people that hired all these people? Because, people aren't going to come here without any future. And so are you going to consequence all the government? Like you saying Biden, you said Biden was, there was these things going around that these illegal immigrants, many of them were like terrorists and military people. They were part of a military in other countries, were given these cards. They're given these governmental cards and food stamps and, all these things, that they were given these privileges. And they were getting away with things. If they showed this card, they would be cleared. And this rumor was going around, the right wing and stuff, and, sure. Okay, if that's true, then why aren't the people who are passing this out, why isn't, anybody in the Biden administration being prosecuted for these things, right? I mean, these are things that are crimes. And so if they're letting in terrorists to overtake America, this so-called replacement population, and they're letting them in to be an army so that they can, disarm the American people, all these things that were said, why are you not making sure all the people that did that on this side of the border, all the people hiring these people, all these people are suffering some way? Like you can hire an illegal person and get no punishment. And he's not going after any of the people because it's his friends and his business partners and, his people are hiring him, Trump's. And so, be honest about this shit. Like, you don't, take it out on the poor people who are desperate in their own country and are coming here and they don't have the ability to come over. Trump has this gold card where people pay $5 million and they get an easy pass to citizenship. Yeah, of course you want all rich people from other countries to come here. But there are poor people that come in through illegal immigration, but it's a hard thing to get through. And so there are people hiring illegals, which makes it like, all right, you got a job waiting for you. And you're not going to get through legally, so you might as well come through. But the fact that they're illegal and you're not on a visa makes you a better employee because they fucking own you. You're a slave then, right? You get no benefits. You're being paid illegally, and they can you can fire you without. I mean, you're just a slave, right? This is like slave labor.
They love you. They love what you do. I'm not sure supportive.
They love you. They love what you're doing, which means these big prisons. This is all about the big prisons.
I want them to do, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah.
You guys are going to build. Yeah, we have got space. So he's going to say homegrown criminals. So, what he's proposing here, based on what he's done with this other guy. So you say, all right, this guy's some illegal alien from El Salvador, so why would anybody give a shit? These people are coming here illegally. They get what they get. But like I said, they're coming here because wealthy Americans and corporations, and whatever it is, right? People are employing them. And so there's no punishment for those people. Like you're luring people here, and there's a need for illegal labor because, there's jobs that Americans just aren't going to do. These kids growing up won't do I've talked about this, in so many videos. But now he's saying homegrown people. Watch that again because that's something beyond that. Because if they can just call people a terrorist, this is where the Cubies, I think I didn't make my whole point about that. So the Cubies came in and they were going after these deep state people, or they wanted to. They got worked by the whole freaking intelligence community because Q wasn't real. Like Q was a fucking bullshit thing, right? And they realized this when Trump got, he got rolled in the 2020 election, and yet they still, they were like Cubies were on the ropes. They stopped commenting. They stopped fucking doing their stupid Q shit, right? They were fucking denuded and humbled. And then they came back around because they always would, because they couldn't really do any long-term changes. But what they did was so egregious is they claimed to be patriots, but they said because of the nature of these deep state criminals and some of them were like people like Tom Hanks, and where there was some creepiness there. It wasn't like there was no evidence. I mean, I covered Tom Hanks, but it wasn't enough to do what they wanted, which was do illegal renderings that take people and the American citizens and bring them down to Guantanamo Bay and give them secret military tribunals and execute them or do whatever, lock them up. And that violates their Miranda rights, that violates their due process, all the judicial rights that you have and don't appreciate. And as a patriot, you should fight for those fucking things. It's one of the great things about America. And Trump wants to get rid of that, right? What he's saying here, we're going to go after domestic now, taking American citizens and putting them in some of these maximum security prisons in El Salvador where their families can't visit them. I mean, even if they are legitimate criminals, that's fucked up. But what if they're not? What if they're people who just disagree with Trump, with political prisoners, which Trump is, saying that he was prosecuted. Trump's a fucking criminal. He did criminal shit. And he was accused of criminal shit. A lot of it maybe was bogus, but not all of it. And I've said this, Trump was skirting the law. He has a criminal mind. He has a team of lawyers. He had a fixer. He did shady shit, just like all these people do. And the one thing that Trump was pissed about is that all these other people do shady shit, but they weren't prosecuted like him. But he thinks he's above the law. And these are all criminals. Like, this guy looks like a fucking criminal. You think this guy became president of El Salvador because he's some great person? No, these politicians are all crooked, right? We know this. And so for him to be floating out this idea, this is so fucked right here, right?
I'm not for support. I want him to do, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
They're laughing at this. Like, these fucking people in there are laughing. These are Trump fucking officials. These are like Marco Rubio. They're laughing at him suggesting that they start taking American citizens, homegrown, and deporting them and locking them up without due process, because this guy didn't get due process. Like, this is completely fucked. So you might not care about illegal immigrants, but you do care about this, because this could mean you, right?
Take note of the people laughing.
Yeah, I mean, of course you did. They're laughing at that. Like, it's there's this video that this guy said that this guy who was some kind of like guy who created some sort of vaccines and shit, and said that he created AIDS that was it was something to do with monkeys that he put in the vaccine, and that he accidentally created AIDS, and that I don't believe that to be true, and there's all this other evidence, but these people, when he was telling this story, like of his fuck up, like he included something in some kind of virus and some kind of thing he was doing, vaccine or something, and that created AIDS. And, again, I don't believe that to be true, but the people were laughing just like that. Like, it's fucked up. And I mean, people who didn't know there's a camera, didn't know, these kind of things. But them laughing at that, that's fucked up, this homegrown terrorist thing.
Earlier tonight, despite a U.S. Supreme Court order telling the Trump administration to, quote, facilitate the return of a Maryland man who was wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador, both President Trump and the Salvadoran president said today they have no intention of bringing this man back to the United States. CNN's Jeff Salony is live outside the White House for us. Jeff, explain to us what exactly is going on with this man who was in this country illegally, but it had been ordered by a judge that he did not have to go back to El Salvador.
Well, Jake, this all started where the Trump administration actually did something it rarely does, and that is admit that it made a mistake. They said because of an administrative error, this 29-year-old Maryland father was wrongfully deported. So that, of course, was the topic front and center in the meeting today in the Oval Office between the U.S. president and the Salvadorian president, Bukele.
Okay, so I want to switch gears here. This is, I want to talk about this briefly here, but this is about, I watched Jake Tapper, and he had this goofy report. And, it was the end of his show, but I ended up recording the whole show. And the beginning of his show and the follow-up show, which was Aaron Burnett's show, they led with this story. And this is the kind of thing that, politicians had a sense of embarrassment and shame But, you know, like if something like this was out there and they fucked up in such a way, like they wouldn't even do anything like this drastic, because politicians were always scared of, you know, getting caught by the media, being exposed, and they got a good criminal racket going. You know, the politicians do. And so there's some sense of not wanting the media to come and expose some bullshit you've done. I mean, Watergate was a huge scandal. It's nothing compared to what Trump is doing. But what Trump has done and what, you know, we've done as the truth community is expose the mainstream media, which, you know, they took when they were getting their ass kicked by Fox, MSNBC, and CNN, they decided to be like Fox, which Fox was always fake news. And CNN and MSNBC were bad, but they weren't like they are now. They are much better. And there was a time where there was like legitimate journalism. You know, they always had their bandwidth, and they always had their corporate handlers in the government, and there's things that they could and couldn't say. But there was some, you know, idea that the media was not complicit with all the bullshit that was going on. But the media has been so discredited, as has, you know, the whole Trump debacle, because the way that they handled this, and I know this is intentionally, we should all know this now, but the way they went after Trump and persecuted him and prosecuted him, and they were obsessed with Trump, and, you know, exposed themselves time and time again, which was documented, sometimes legitimately, sometimes illegitimately, by independent people in the internet and the media. You know, what we do is, and we talk about how CNN sucks so bad, and so now it doesn't matter if CNN reports truth about you, like they're doing with Trump here. It doesn't matter if you fuck up and make a mistake, because there's no accountability. There's no checks and balances. And Trump and his administration were gifted this, you know, Supreme Court ruling that a president can't do anything criminal. So now he's, you know, he's going to what could be his last term. He's getting old. Who knows what his thought process is here. But he has nothing to fucking lose, and he can go full Trump. And there's nobody stopping him. He's got Republicans who are all under his thumb, and you got Democrats who have been denuded and, you know, embarrassed by the whole Joe Biden debacle. I mean, even Jake Tapper's going to get into that here, right? And so, you know, Trump is a free pass to just go and wreck the fucking world. Like, and he wrecks shit. Like, this is what Trump does. And when Trump goes full Trump, he destroys shit. He goes bankrupt, and that, you know, he's a loser. He's a flim-flam man. He's a grifter. Like, he actually believes his own bullshit. Like, he's a grifter who believes in his grift. And he actually thinks he's going to do these things, and then he's going to be like, oh, I thought it was going to work out better, right? And so, you know, this stuff that's being reported would be devastating 20 years ago, you know, 10 years ago even, to a candidate, to a politician. But now it isn't, because the media has no fucking balls anymore. They have no credibility, and the government, nobody does. And so Trump can just pretend it isn't happening and say shit like we're going to go after homegrown people. And the homegrown people are his people, because, you know, Luigi Mangione is a hero amongst these Trumpers, these right-wing people, especially the extremists, and many people, because of the fucking debacle that is the criminal activity that goes on in the American insurance business and the American you know, pharmaceutical businesses and these things. And he's a CEO, but he's one of Trump's people. And they're going for the death penalty on that guy, even though he's a hero amongst Trump's people. And so Trump people there's a disconnect there. They don't realize that Trump is going to go after them the way he went after them on January 6th and threw them under the bus. And he'll go after them now. You know, all these people, you know, I mean, the ones that are loyal Trumpers, yeah, sure. I mean, that'll carry some weight, but, you know, he's going to go after American citizens because no one's going to stop him, right? Like, he's just, you know, he can go full Trump now. There isn't anything right out there right now stopping Trump from doing all this bullshit, right? And, you know, the Trumpers are still, you know, he's got a group of people that are so disillusioned with America and the media and all these other agencies that, you know, Trump, they kind of know Trump's a piece of shit, but they're always going to look at him being better than the other side, which is false, because they don't understand what he's going to do to them and, you know, everybody, but that's just where we're at. Okay, so before I move on to the CNN weird reporting, Katy Perry and them, this fucking women going to space and shit, and a lot of things. I got a Alec Baldwin joke. Nayib Burkel's administration, this is the guy from El Salvador, has faced significant allegations of corruption which have drawn scrutiny from both domestic and international observers. Here's a breakdown of the key areas of concern. I asked if this guy, Nayib Burkel, is corrupt, right? He is the guy that Trump was meeting with. And so, of course he's corrupt. But Trump doesn't give a shit about that because they have this prison deal. Reports have emerged alleging Burkel's government engaged in secret negotiations with gangs like MS-13, offering them prison privileges in exchange for reduced violence and electoral support. These accusations have been met with denials from Burkel. The U.S. Treasury Department has also placed sanctions on El Salvadorian officials for their involvement in these alleged negotiations. Critics have raised concerns about lack of transparency in the government spending, particularly during COVID-19 pandemic. There are allegations of irregularities of public procurement and awarding of contracts. Burkel's administration has been accused of limiting access to public information, hindering efforts to monitor government activities, weakening of anti-corruption institutions. He's done these things. Concerns have been raised about weakening of institutions designed to combat corruption, such as the Attorney General's Office and the Institute for Access to Public Information. The removal of independent officials and the appointment of loyalists have fueled accusations of political interference. Sounds like Trump, what Trump has done, right? He's another Trump. Alleged allegations of personal enrichment. Investigations have been published that allege that Burkel and his family have increased their personal wealth significantly during their time in office, with questions surrounding the increase of land that the Burkel family has acquired. The U.S. government has placed sanction of several Burkel's close associates, inciting credible allegations of corruption. And so this is a Trump guy. He sounds like Trump. He does Trump shit, right? So this is important, like all of it. Like this is, the evidence is overwhelming about Trump and all the things and all of his associates. And he's just heading to a disastrous course on all levels, and he's not on your side. And he'll fuck you over like he's fucked all of his friends and people. Anybody that has been with Trump gets fucked over eventually by the guy.
Taking trip to the edge of space today. What Katy Perry and Gayle King had to say when they returned to Earth. That's next.
Smells amazing. Oh my God. That is so good. Should we dig in?
Eva Longoria, searching for Spain.
Have you looked in Boston, Massachusetts? So I saw this promo. I saw this thing with Jake Tapper saying Katy Perry and Gayle King went to space. And I'll show you that. That's fucking great. Bitches in space. And she, this thing with Eva Longoria, she's searching for Spain and didn't know she just has to go to Boston where it's some kind of unique principle where there's, this little section of a Boston suburb that's also Spain.
On CNN.
In our out of this world lead, Blue Origin released new video of that star-studded all-female crew who ventured very briefly to space this morning.
All-female crew is a huge stretch. It's 6 of them. Otherwise, I'd call this a coven. But they don't have any skills. They're passengers, right? They're not a crew. They're not a part of some mission. They got shot up into space, in air quotes, right? And
The newer footage shows the weightlessness part of the journey. Journalist Gayle King and pop star Katy Perry were among the 6 women who participated in this latest Blue Origin suborbital launch. The roughly 10-minute flight was just long enough to provide a breathtaking view of the planet.
So this is not a breathtaking view, what they're showing there. And, flat earthers are going to have a field day with this because, and I'm not supporting the flat earthers or it just sucks. The whole flat earth thing, you guys know how I feel about it. It's a nightmare. But, them going out of the way to provide an image that is probably fake, almost definitely fake. You know, like some of this stuff, they seem like they just do it either to provoke the flat earthers or, you know, I mean, I don't know why they would be scared of them, right? You know, this is not even a NASA flight. This has nothing to do with NASA.
And a few moments of zero gravity. Listen to some of the reactions just after setting foot back on Earth.
Complete and utter joy and gratefulness.
Okay, so this is Lauren Sanchez. So it was a coven because she's a dude. I mean, I'm pretty sure Lauren Sanchez is a dude. She's, you know, married to Jeff Bezos. But there was other women that went there. So there's 3 celebrities, right? Katy Perry, journalist Gayle King, and philanthropist Lauren Sanchez could be heard shouting in excitement. But also the other women here, it's like frickin' they just ran an ad here. Like X out of it. Scientist Asha Brown, I don't know, Asia, Amanda Nugent, and film producer Carrie Ann Flynn. And so there was 3 legitimate people, or two scientists, scientific type people. I don't know if they had any role in seems like they're just all passengers. And then a filmmaker. And then these, you know, 2 celebrities. I guess Katy Perry's the sort of biggest celebrity. Lauren Sanchez is married to a rich dude. and Gayle Gayle King is best friends with a rich dude, Oprah Winfrey. So anyways, seems like it is a coven.
You can heal. No dream is too wild. The moon was so beautiful, and that was like, I felt like that was a special gift just for me.
You can't go through what we went through to look out for each other, to help each other, and not be changed by that.
I will never be the same.
This experience is second to being a mom.
This marked the 11th crewed trip to space for a New Shepard spacecraft. Before you go, I have 2 books coming out in May. Original Sin, about President Biden's decision to run for re-election and to cover up of his decline. You will not believe what we found.
You hear my birds chirping in the back, but he's calling Biden running for re-election equivalent to Eve stricken Adam to bite the apple in the Garden of Eden. Like that. And he said, you won't believe what we found. Well, I mean, if it's not the fact that he had Parkinson's, which we already kind of know because MSNBC did a report on it, that he was senile. I mean, but he's written a whole book on this because he was one of the people who was there. You know, he was one of the questioners. He was one of the people who was asking Biden questions in that disastrous debate performance. And, you know, he saw Biden just like deteriorate. And then he's always been a little bit skeptical, a little bit whiny about this. But he's pitching this shit book here. I mean, this is incredible. These, you know, covens in space, witches in space. and then Eva Longoria's searching for Boston, Spain. And then him shilling for his own books here.
And in October, Race Against Terror, about the hunt to prosecute an al-Qaeda terrorist who killed Americans and was out to kill more. You can check them out and pre-order them at jaketapper.com. Until tomorrow, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Substack, and on TikTok at Jake Tapper. You can follow the show on X at The Lead CNN. If you ever miss an episode of The Lead, you can listen to the show once you get your podcasts. Aaron Burnett out front starts right now.
For a guy who has this much low energy as Jake Tapper's, he really does shill for his own shit. And then like 3 days before that, I turned on the TV and this was fucking on.
But prices yet, but you are going to have to?
Yeah, we're holding off. We did increase our prices about 2 months ago just because everything was so expensive. So about 2 months ago we increased, and we just to increase again on our customers. We're in a very middle class to lower middle class neighborhood.
So my first reaction was like, holy shit, what is this? These are trade war women. You hear my chicks in the background in all my clips now. We're getting ready to move them somewhere else. It's really cold out today, so that's setting us back. But I'm like, what's going on?
And we're just concerned about our customers. Are they going to be able to afford things as it goes up? What we've talked about is perhaps going through our list of coffees and what what from what country is going to be a little bit less expensive. And that's a good plan, I think, but at the same time, every other coffee house is going to be doing the same thing. So just like looking at supply and demand, just like our wine list, we're going to try to do more domestic wines. But then everyone's going to try to do domestic wines.
So I couldn't believe I was watching this. These three women, like if it was one woman in glasses, these are sisters, whatever their name is. They have it here. It's somewhere in this thing. Three sisters. It's called something. They have a coffee house and a wine shop, right? Which is, they are small business owners, sure. And maybe CNN viewers can relate to these women, liberal, women running a business. But it's all about women in this thing. Everything's about women, and they're, anybody but men, and certainly anybody but white men. But people aren't going to be that upset about coffee shops, which is a luxury item. I mean, you don't need these $7 lattes. I mean, these expensive drinks that people get on a regular basis. And if you cut out those drinks, people are spending $20 a day on stuff like this. For even more, so probably more money on things like this that are unnecessary. You can make better stuff at home. And, these businesses will probably, a lot of them will go out of business, which will affect the economy. But it's not where you should be going. Like this, that they have to raise their coffee prices and their wine prices, which are probably, most people would consider them overpriced. I mean, I don't, let me see this thing. We'll go to a price list. I'll look them up when we get done with this. But just, this isn't where they're trying to shit on Trump here. Like, you want to see real hardship. You want to see people who won't be able to feed their kids. I mean, not that you want to see that, but that's what you should be showing people. That Trump is causing families stress and, making choices about nutrition. And, he's got RFK Jr. talking about, the nutrition crisis and obesity. And these people are going to have to eat more processed foods and, all these things across the board. People with kids, impoverished people. I mean, anything but this, right? Like, this is hard to identify with or feel bad about. Yeah, it sucks and it's wrong, and the terrorists are hurting people. But it's just, and it's the coverage is horrible. There's background noise, people in the restaurant. These three women are just like having a private conversation, conferring with each other. It's just fucking weird.
Then you've got a supply and demand problem again. So it's going to be an interesting ride. Yeah, it'll be tight.
It's also exceedingly difficult to import, or rather to grow coffee domestically. Most of the U.S. just doesn't support that kind of climate. So inevitably, how are you going to be able to confront that?
Well, we mostly, all we can really do is sort of pay attention to our costs, increase if we need to, try to keep it down.
This is where the saying white people problems would apply, right? This is, it's a stressor and this is a thing. And they could lose their business. Who knows, what's happened. And that's not good, it's unnecessary with Trump's bullshit. But again, they're just missing the overall point here. Sisters Sludge Coffee and Cafe and Wine Bar.
We can adjust how many people we have on staff. Well, we're not going to lay anybody off, but maybe we can't have two people working. We can only have one person working for a while, so service might slow down. We're going to have to be really careful about controlling our payroll. And then it's what we put on the shelves. How much do we buy?
Yeah, it's reducing the amount of product that we have on the shelves, and then the other piece is that we're already seeing problems with getting some product.
Holy shit, this is such a horrible report. This is bad reporting. So they're in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is their place. They serve food, wine, and coffee. Their coffee menu, they have some $2, they have $3 cafe latte is a small, medium's $4, and a large is almost $6, $5 or whatever it is. So there's their prices, right? There are various things. A little bit cheaper than Starbucks, but this is, just an old photo. Like they changed they have Purple Rain, fucking Prince bullshit over here, like espresso shots. But these, this is probably an old photo. Like this, they don't really have a current menu. They have stuff for their wine. Their wines are, like $8 a glass, $12 a glass. I don't really drink wine or have never drank wine, so I don't know. But this is, upper middle class type stuff. People with money, and mostly overpriced things. It looks like maybe slightly better prices than Starbucks, but basically the same thing, right? And so it's not great that any small business goes out of business because of Trump's bullshit tariffs and all his incompetence. But this is just not, like it's just not good reporting. It's not, you want to make it worse than this. You want to make it worse than people not being able to get lattes and glasses of wine, which, is bad, but it isn't, like in terms of the collapse of an economy and all these other things, it's not nearly, the kind of a tragedy that you want to portray out there. You're talking about chaos, you're talking about end of world shit, you're talking about World War III, you're talking about the collapse of the civilization as we now know it. Glasses of wine and lattes, that's, those are the first things to go. Like those are things that people can live without. Okay, so apparently they have them dirt on Mark Zuckerberg, who is, went on Joe Rogan and he's clearly kind of a Trumper. Whatever. I haven't watched that yet. But here, they're claiming that the polls are crumbling on Trump. Let's see if Jed Psaki can produce.
And yes, his intention is to scare you. And yeah, the things he's saying are scary. I'm not going to minimize that. But his comments are also a reminder that aspiring dictators, of which he is one, who threaten to deport their own citizens, are not speaking from
She's responding to that thing I showed you.
a position of strength. They are speaking from a position of weakness. And the cracks are showing all over the place right now. And so tonight I actually wanted to start in one of the places where the cracks are the biggest and most obvious. And that's the economy.
I knew it was going to be the economy. I should have said it.
Where Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs have everyone from conservative Republicans to Wall Street billionaires to even rural farmers saying, what in the world is that guy doing?
What the world is that guy doing?
And we're seeing that sentiment very clearly in the polls, too. In a new CBS YouGov poll that was released just yesterday, a majority of Americans said the economy is getting worse. And a growing number of Americans...
Let's just go back here. Now, polls are polls, CBS, whatever. But who are the 28% that are saying it's getting better? It's not fucking getting better. Like, what Trump is doing is, he's showing his incompetence. Like, the Trumpers just won't see it. They just fucking won't see it. We know it, because Trump said it himself that he could shoot somebody in the face in Fifth Avenue. But what does it say about the Trumpers that they could say staying the same. You can make a case for staying about the same for your own situation, but things are going up and things are going to start disappearing. I'm concerned about small businesses that I rely on, like, that Wild Brine and things like that. There's companies that are, starting off or, haven't been bought up by some fucking corporation or some whatever kind of thing that they do, Pepsi or some Nabisco or whatever, Nestle.
Is getting worse. And a growing number of Americans say Trump's policies are making them financially worse off. You can see the chart on the screen right now, and you can see it shows a 7-point jump on that question from just last month. The majority of Americans are also against Trump's tariff and trade policy. But the news gets even worse for Trump. Get a load of this. When the people in this poll were asked who would benefit most from Trump's tariffs, 3/4 of Americans said the wealthy. And 71% said large corporations. I think everybody knows how popular the wealthy and large corporations are. Not very popular at all. Just imagine how well it's going to sit with the majority of Americans when Congress returns in May, just in a couple weeks, and focuses all their time on cutting taxes for the wealthy and large corporations, which is what they're going to do. But the upshot is this. Trump is underwater. He's losing popularity faster than any new president has in recent history, other than, well, of course, Donald Trump.
None of these things matter until real shit happens. Like, this is all projection. This is how people are viewing what Trump is going to do and how it's going to affect them. But inflation is going to get really bad. And when prices go up, and, this is a lot of it's due to Trump, but it's stuff that's going to happen anyway. Like, they've been suppressing inflation. Gold is over $3,000 an ounce. I was stunned to find that. I was watching Gold Rush, which was from this summer, and gold was at 2,700 in the episode I was watching that showed Gold Rush. And I checked to see what it is now, and it's gone up $500. And gold doesn't go up. Gold is stable. The dollar goes down. So when gold prices goes up, that means the dollar is being valued against gold. And they're doing things to suppress gold prices. They're doing things to suppress inflation. But they can't do it completely. And now this stuff with China, this war, and things when things get really bad, when you're affected by things, when there's things aren't in your grocery store, right? Things are missing, or they're just too expensive for you to buy things you used to regularly buy, which has already happened under Biden, and one of the reasons they elected Trump in the first place. So when that happens, and there's a freak out, and then people start freaking out, and runs on the banks and things like that ensue, like, that's real shit. Where there's like a lack of confidence in the president and the American economy. And when people panic like that, and Trump comes out and says, "Don't fucking be panicked," right? I mean, just, here, let me go to this Freed Zakaria thing.
It was the flip-flop hailed around the world after insisting that he would not budge on his tariffs and branding anyone who urged him to do so as a panican, a new party based on weak and stupid people.
Hearing him read that, I watched this earlier. This is as far as I got. But, him saying a panican, a new party based on weak and stupid people. Like, he gets to create a party of people he's selecting, like this dictatorship where he's saying, there's a new political party. You guys aren't volunteering to be a part of it, even though parties are your choice. There's going to be a new one based on my choice, and I'm going to put you in this party, that you're a panican. And, Trump panicked the whole time Joe Biden was doing stuff. Everything that Joe Biden did, he said, this is going to, was fire and brimstone. This is going to bring down America, these things. And then, of course, blaming him afterwards. And there's, like they're saying this has never been done before, the tariffs. And there are reasons why no one else would do it. And they're giving him credit for having the courage to do things no one else would do, because people are going to have to eat shit. Like, if it was something that was going to make them popular, politicians have a good scam going, like I was saying earlier. And so they know that when they upset the tip the cart, the horse thing, whatever it is, right? they unsettle the cart, whatever the fucking saying is. When they do things to ruffle things up, and they do things that could be potentially risky, they avoid that like the plague, because then they lose their position and their power that is giving them wealth. They don't want to, they're do-nothings, right? They're the do-nothings, which Trump talked about, right? That they were like zombies. I forget what Trump said, that they were either, whatever he said, that he qualified people in Washington as one or two groups. And there are a lot of people just don't want to do anything because they don't want to be held accountable. The first season of that show, whatever it is, it's a guy who's a lawyer in The Recruit, I think it's called. He's a lawyer for the CIA, and like everybody doesn't want to hear anything, they don't want to know anything, because then they become accountable for it. They become, they're on the hook for it. And that great scene from the show, the HBO show Succession, where the character Tom was this goofy, husband of one of the children of vying for succession. And he's given a position at head of cruise lines, and the retiring guy tells him about all these criminal activities and said, "You're now dead." Like, you now know this. You're completely on the hook. You're complicit. You are an accomplice. And he's like, I just been killed. Like he's got all this information that he, if he gets called before Congress, all these things. But these people, they don't want to do anything because they don't want to know anything. They don't want to risk their positions. And so they're giving him credit for doing something. Well, if it was something that could lead to greatness in America, but you would have to suffer short term for some long term goal. Trump isn't a long term person. He's not a person that stays the course. And he often throws things under the bus or people under the bus when things don't work out. Like he never takes accountability for his bad decisions. And so, he's somebody who wants immediate gratification, and yet he expects the American people to suffer more issues, more price hikes, and more economic stress in the markets when this is a flim-flam economy based in perception. And as soon as they go south on the economy and him, he's fucked. And it's going to happen quickly. That's why nobody did this before. Even if it could have long-term goals, and it doesn't, because he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't know what the other countries are going to do. He doesn't know how this is going to affect everybody. And it's going to raise prices. There's a 10% hike on everything that's imported, so you're going to pay 10% more on everything. Just for that. But there's going to be a whole lot of other issues at play here. And so, for him, let's listen to him say this again. But him saying the panicans.
Here's my take. It was the flip-flop hailed around the world after insisting that he would not budge on his tariffs and branding anyone who urged him to do so as a panican, a new party based on weak and stupid people. Donald Trump reversed course and paused his massive reciprocal tariffs for 90 days, except on China, while he negotiates deals with foreign countries. But sighs of relief may be premature. For one, America's tariffs are still at a 100-plus year high by one measure, according to the Yale Budget Lab, which will cost Americans dearly. Even more importantly, these tariff negotiations will inevitably result in an orgy of corruption.
That's why I clicked on this, the title, Orgy of Corruption. And so he said something similar before.
The American economy is being transformed from the leading free market in the world to the leading example of crony capitalism. A market economy functions best when there are limited constraints placed on it, but especially when these constraints are clear, fair, and applicable to all. The more complicated the taxes, rules, and regulations, the greater the inefficiency.
Well, now Trump is getting rid of the tariffs for like Apple and tech companies and, these other companies. And, some companies he's picking winners and losers, and he pick in industry and business and all these things, right? And it's going to go on based on nepotism and people who are, rewarding Trump. This is the whole thing. We know this from his guy's earlier take, which we just know in general because we know how Trump is.
Country after country, from India to Nigeria to Morocco. But more significant, the greater the complexity, the greater the corruption. With tariffs come tariff waivers, often granted by the hundreds to specific industries, companies, even products. In 2018 and 19, the Trump administration announced an assortment of tariffs, including 25% on steel, and also a program of waivers. They got around 500,000 applications. This week, when asked how he would determine these exemptions, Trump replied,
instinctively.
I didn't know this was going to be this good. Instinctively. Whoever greases his palm with money or support. And so, this is fucked. It's so bad.
Studies show that politicians' instincts usually favor their contributors, which then encourages pervasive corruption. It was true with tariffs for much of American history until FDR changed the system. And over time, in Paul Krugman's words, tariff policy went from being famously dirty to remarkably clean. It's getting dirtier fast. We already have the evidence from Trump's first term. A detailed academic study of the tariffs in Trump's first term found that companies that made substantial investments in political connections to Republicans prior to and during the beginning of the Trump administration were more likely to secure exemptions for products otherwise subject to tariffs.
That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like Trump at all. This is great.
Conversely, companies that made contributions to Democratic politicians had decreased odds of tariff exemption approval. That study looked at more than 7,000 applications for exemptions from tariffs on China in the first term and found that just a $4,000 donation to the Democratic Party reduced the company's chances of being granted an exemption to less than 1 in 10. As Timothy Carney from the conservative think tank AEI notes, Trump's first election created a trade lobbying boom from 900.
Because of course it is. This is how Trump fucking does business. I mean, you know, there's things that you don't know about because you don't know they've never been done before. But when any time Trump does something, he has an angle. He's going to monetize it for himself. So he's going to make a shit ton of money and gets a shit ton of support. And this is why all these people are glad handing him, you know, all these people are surrounding him, supporting him. And this is just going to be, you know, all these companies would gladly pay corruption, just corruption search, you know, do corrupt things and pay a surcharge as long as their competitors have these expensive tariffs. So if you're in business now and you have an American company and you're competing against a foreign imported company that already has to pay the price of shipping. So let's say you're selling, I don't know what it is, any number of fucking, you know, any number of commodities, and you have the, you know, similar products, you now have an advantage in terms of being able to price things and also raising your price 5% because they have a 10% increase, and you'll still be cheaper than them. You get to screw the American people out of 5% because of Trump's tariffs, and you know the company that gets exempt from these tariffs gets to, you know, outcompete the ones that don't, you know, and Trump is going to, I mean, this is what he's going to do. I mean, this is his scam. He doesn't see, this is why he doesn't give a shit if you can't feed your kids, because this has never been about you motherfuckers. You Trumpers that fucking pulled the lever for this guy, not once, but twice. I can understand the first time, but you should have been at least hesitant the second time. I mean, I didn't know he was going to do all this, but he's capable of it. You know, he's going to monetize this thing.
21 entities who hired lobbyists to work on trade to a peak of 1,419 by 2019. With the highest tariffs in the industrialized world, the American bazaar is now open. Countries and companies will descend on Washington to cut deals and gain carve-outs, exemptions, and special terms. In the last 4 weeks, Vietnam has announced a flurry of measures designed to mollify the Trump administration and get a good trade deal. Among them, approval for Elon Musk's Starlink to operate in the country and a plan to expedite a Trump Organization project. In fact, there are...
Here, Vietnamese Prime Minister supporting expediting Trump development and meeting with Trump org rep. And so, you know, this is it. This is what Trump does. This is what a fucking con artist does or grifter does, right? This is grifting 101, and he's got it. He's got a fucking, there's nothing anybody can do about it, you know, and he's going to just go through with it until, you know, he's forced to stop.
In fact, there are at least 19 Trump-branded real estate projects around the world that will be under development while he is president, and possibly many others in the works. President Trump has launched his own social media company and his own meme coin. Other countries surely see this all
meme coin
as an invitation to invest and
this
to
fight bullshit. We'll be covering that.
Influence American foreign and economic policy. It has been deeply dispiriting to watch some of America's legendary capitalists, canonical figures from Wall Street, endorse a deal-making process by which the American free market is going to be pockmarked with tariffs, taxes, rules, exemptions, and carve-outs.
This is more rigging the system against you. Rigging the system against honest, non-corrupt people. I mean, Trump is like, this is third world bullshit. This is shithole country. This is the shithole country stuff that Trump said, you know, oh, that country's a shithole country. Trump's making it, this is banana republic bullshit, right? This is what you do when you go in someplace and you just, you know, run these fucking scams without any oversight. And that's what Trump's doing. Banana republic, shithole country stuff. Third world shit, right?
it's worth recalling that Milton Friedman repeatedly noted about businessmen. You can get any leading businessman to give you an eloquent speech on the virtues of a free market. But when it comes to their own business, they want to go down to Washington and get a special tariff to protect their business. They want a special tax deduction. They want a tax subsidy. The India I grew up in was a country riddled with tariffs, high barriers designed to protect the country's domestic industry and shield it from what was regarded as unfair foreign competition. It produced stagnation, poverty, and lots of corruption, thoroughly politicizing the economy. No business of any size in India could survive without a good relationship with the government. When I got to America, I was delighted to see that most businessmen went about their work with little...
He said this before in his earlier thing, so, you know. In India, you can't understand. You have to go there to interact with their bureaucracy and see the corruption firsthand, and it's brutal. All right, so I was going to do the Mark Zuckerberg thing, but I'm running out of steam here, and this video is probably already 2 hours. That's just taking... I have all this stuff I want to get to, and I'm just not able to get to it, right? And I want to lead with this movie thing next week, or next video. And so, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, at least it's not boring. That's all you could say. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.